Hello and welcome to GreenFleet Talks. My name is Kate Armitage and I'm your host for our discussion today. I'm delighted to be joined by Jessica Chapman, Corporate Sales Director at LeasePlan. Hello, Jessica.
Hi, Kate. Nice to see you again.
Yep, nice to catch up with you. So, Jessica, today we're going to be discussing how LeasePlan is helping the public sector reach their decarbonisation targets. Can you tell me a little bit more about your role at LeasePlan?
Yeah, certainly, Kate. I'm Corporate Sales Director at LeasePlan. I've worked for the organisation for over 20 years now. And in my role as Corporate Sales Director, I'm responsible for our corporate fleets, which also includes our public sector fleets. So it's a really good opportunity for me to see the similarities, but really importantly, the differences between the two segments.
Oh, well, let's dive straight into that then. Can you tell me about some of the complexities that public sector fleets face on the road to decarbonisation?
Yeah. I think it's really important to acknowledge that there is a difference between how our corporate and our public sector fleets operate. The way that they're structured and the way that they're set up and the way that they're governed means there's some really specific ways in which they need to operate. So at LeasePlan, we've got lots of experience of working with public sector. We've been doing it for decades. As I say myself personally, for over 20 years, I've worked alongside public sector organisations. And for us, it's about creating a team of people who are specialists in understanding what those differences are. So it's not just customer services and frontline and dealing, making the sale to the public sector, but it's managing it all in life. So some of the key challenges can be around billing and invoicing and the way a bill needs to be structured or built, or the portals that they might need to use to access billing. So we've got a dedicated team at LeasePlan in our finance team who just manage some public sector fleets so that they can really be aware of those different nuances. The way also that they procure is really different in public sector. Yep. So we love to use a framework, or public sector love to use a framework, and they are great. They really, really serve the public sector well. But you've got to have the knowledge and the experience to guide a customer through that, through the myriad of choices they can have on the framework. So LeasePlan are on all of the key frameworks, so the Crown Commercial Services, Procurement for Housing, National Services Scotland, to name a few. We also work really closely with the procurement specialists that are in the industry, so people like the Procurement Partnership or ESPO. So real buying organisations that understand how public sectors need to work, we can support those and we can work together collaboratively so that we can meet those really strict tender and governance guidance.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I find quite regularly when I'm talking to people about procurement that there's sometimes a little bit of a trap in terms of thinking that you're procuring a product, but actually it's much more of a service, and how you would go about that procurement is actually quite different if you know that.
And that really echoes, Kate, with our managing director's philosophy. He gets very, very upset when people call us a funder, or LeasePlan are a funder on the CCS framework. He doesn't want us to be seen as something transactional that just funds some vehicles. It's about delivering that insight, that knowledge, that experience, helping our customers shape their fleet strategies going forward. So it's much more than just providing them funding, and it's having a real holistic view. We've got some experience as well, Kate, from our international colleagues. So we have a really large international public sector fleet, about 165,000 vehicles we've got across our international LeasePlan breadth. And we meet as a community. So we have what we call our public sector gurus. And it's really great to share learning with different countries. So particularly people like the Netherlands and Norway, where they adopted that electrification in their public services much sooner than we did. We've been able to take some really great learning from them around sort of vehicle choices, costings, pricing, all of those things that are really relevant for our public sector. So we've had some great learnings there as well.
It's interesting when you talk about Norway and the Netherlands, because typically they're quite small vehicle markets, but as you say, on the ultra low emission side, they've been much quicker to adopt. So they're further on in the learnings, if you like.
And it's great to see that play out now within our own public sector fleet as we see that transition really starting to happen. It's really great to be able to be part of that movement.
Perfect. And just one last question then. Thinking about public sector, is there how do you manage this tension between reducing cost and minimizing environmental impact? Because they're both are key objectives, aren't they?
I think that is it's a really, really key objective, and for us we have an excellent consultancy team that really work closely with our customers, so they're able to understand what their road to zero ambitions are, how quickly they need to decarbonise, and what plans they've got in place. And we do lots of modelling for customers so that they can see that real whole life cost approach. That's a really important conversation that we have with our customers, because when you look at that headline figure of the cost of an electric vehicle versus its ICE counterpart, until you look at it in the whole as a whole life cost, you get that disparity in that pricing. So we really work with those organisations to try and help them understand where their costs are coming from and where they can make those savings.
Great. And so your consultancy team then, do they tend to work throughout the duration of a contract, or is it very much at the front end in terms of that modelling and profiling?
It can be a bit of both. There are customers that just want some help in designing a policy or launching a new service to the community, and they may want some help understanding. It could be things like model type or vehicles, particularly in the commercial vehicle segment, what fleet would be the right fit for them. So there might be some upfront work doing that with our commercial vehicle and our consultancy experts within that team. And it might be just about cost. It might be that cost space and that whole life cost modelling. But really importantly for us, we try to keep that throughout the life of the contract, because needs change over time.
They do.
So it's really, and targets change, don't they? Hey, like when you think how much change we've been through over the last couple of years, things keep getting thrown in our way and we keep having to kind of dodge and move. And public sector have had to be really agile over the last couple of years in doing that. So sometimes it's an upfront piece, but sometimes it's really kind of nurturing them through change.
It's a big challenge, and with so many new vehicles coming to market, and plus new demands, and coping with the economic environment, what worked, what didn't work last year may work this year. You don't know. What other services have you found that the public sector really embraced?
I think that whole electrification piece has had some real conversation starters with populations of the public sector that we hadn't dealt with previously. So, and particularly employees, so directly working with public sector employees. And looking particularly at EV salary sacrifice. I know you at GreenFleet are really clued up on salary sacrifice, as are your audience. I know they are. But there is such uptake in that. And I guess there's never been a time more important to be supporting our public sector workers and sort of helping them manage their budgets and their incomes and their costs. And EV salary sacrifice has been such a good way for them to do that in terms of that real budgeting motoring. So everything is included in the lease. They sacrifice it from their salary, so there is no credit checks, there's no deposits to pay, and it's fixed monthly costs. And let's face it, over the next few years, we all need that.
Jessica, I was talking to one of your colleagues about it last week. I'm a massive advocate of EV salary sacrifice, and LeasePlan have been very active in that area. And you're absolutely right that the current environment, where it's going to become so important to fix your monthly outgoings as much as possible, that EV salary sacrifice is a great way to get a new affordable vehicle. And one other area which I think is probably quite topical is there have been vehicle supply issues with waiting lists, reported waiting lists for some vehicles of regularly 12 months, sometimes even as far out as 18 months. But for public sector fleets, this must create a bit of a shortfall in when they were planning to renew their vehicles and retaining those older vehicles. How can LeasePlan support with that?
It's really delayed some of that transition of customers. So they might have vehicles, lots of our public sector customers have electric vehicles on order with us. In fact, I checked our order bank this morning and I've got vehicles with delivery dates of 2024 in the order bank. So, that's how, and these are electric vehicles as well. So that's how far out some of these lead times genuinely are. And what we've done about that is we've created, or we've grown our LeasePlan flexible fleet. So this is a fleet of almost 4,000 vehicles now, which LeasePlan own. And we use them as like a midterm rental. So usually sort of from 3 to 6 months up to 2 years. So it's really about covering that gap. And where we own the vehicles, we haven't got quite the same supply challenges that the rental companies are facing at the moment. So within that mix of vehicles, we've got some petrol and some diesel, but lots of hybrid and lots of electric vehicles as well. So it really meets that need whilst customers are waiting. It also gives them a great opportunity to sort of try before you buy.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Or indeed, if they've got a vehicle that, if they've got the same vehicle that they've got on order, you know, it may make them think, oh, is this the right vehicle for me? So Jessica, really interesting. I'm quite keen to discuss any specific fleets that you've worked with, which can kind of illustrate some of the things that you've been doing for public sector.
Yeah, certainly. And I guess something that's really topical at the moment is the work that we did for Department of Health. So Department of Health during COVID and during lockdown, as you all know, NHS launched the Test and Trace programme. And we were really proud to be appointed the partner to provide those 500 mobile testing units for the Department of Health. So that was an absolutely mammoth task, but it was such a great piece of collaboration. So we worked really closely with the Department for Health. We worked with CCS, who with a framework that the vehicles were accessed from. We worked with the manufacturer, which was Renault, and with all of the supply chain to really build these vehicles as quickly as we possibly can, spec them up, and make sure they had everything that they needed for these for the use, you know, for the whole country really. So it was a really great program to be part of.
It's super interesting because you know, when I think back to that time, when I think back to March 2020, we all knew that there was a problem. We all knew that the NHS was going to be under huge stress imminently, but we didn't necessarily know what the answer was. So you know, you're setting about delivering a solution, but you don't necessarily know what the end result is in terms of volume or special needs for the requirements for those vehicles.
And as I say, it was really proud to get the vehicles out and help build what they needed and to deliver. We took so much learning from that, but it's also really sort of humbling seeing them come back. So they're starting to come back as sort of COVID is finishing and the pandemic is, you know, we're moving on to the next phase of our culture, and it's really interesting to see them sort of coming back and that being a real end of an era, something to be really proud of. And actually the vehicles are only sort of 18 months, 2 years old, so we're looking at how we can use those again. How can we second life them? Are there other public sector organisations that could use them for benefit to other NHS trusts or Department for Health?
Which I'm sure there is, particularly with the long lead time. So there's maybe a synergy there. And have you worked with any councils on electrifying fleets?
Yeah, a great early adopter has always been Scotland. Scotland have always been really great at adopting electric vehicles. South Lanarkshire Council was such a really good example of converting their whole pool fleet into electric vehicles. So they had 140 vehicles, which are pool vehicles, and they're used by a variety of drivers. So they can be some regular drivers that have to go out into the community, or they can be people just needing to attend different training courses. So they converted all 140 of those into Renault Zoes. And what was really fabulous was so many people got to drive electric vehicles that wouldn't normally. So these aren't typical company car users, these are sort of pool vehicles. And the feedback that the trust had back, that the council had back, was absolutely about, I didn't know how good electric was, or actually I'm going to go and buy my own electric now I've had a chance to drive them. So actually being able to give people experience. I mean, it was 140 vehicles, thousands of drivers that drive them. So it was just a really great way that the council was able to share that experience across their employee base.
I totally agree. You know, it's so common that someone's first experience of driving an EV is a company car, and then they enjoy it so much they take it away and say, right, I'm all for this. And of course, in Scotland in particular, it helps that they do have a very comprehensive
Really good
public charging network, which helps. So big up to Charge Place Scotland as well.
Indeed.
Jessica, thank you very much. I certainly feel that I've got a better insight into the breadth and depth of the services that LeasePlan offer the public sector. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Kate.
Thank you. And thank you to LeasePlan for joining GreenFleet Talks. And thank you for watching. Please tune again to GF365 soon.